English at Peking University School of Transnational Law in China. And I say that because one of the most difficult things I encountered, among many things, teaching Chinese law students was creativity. I found that when I gave my law students fact patterns, that in their memoranda, they regurgitated the facts. And I thought, well, when I get to the University of San Diego, it's going to be a lot better. You know, they're going to be creative. And my first assignment, I gave them a fact pattern, and they didn't synthesize the facts. They again regurgitated the facts. So one thing that I had to do in China was get really creative in my own assignment design. I typically incorporated a lot of record documents, and because Chinese law students tend to be very media savvy and up on digital media pop culture, I tried to incorporate some digital media into those record documents. I found that at the University of San Diego, the faculty is trying to beef up the IP focus of the curriculum. And in fact, next semester or next year, we may be incorporating an IP-centric legal writing section in which we talk about IP. We have IP themes. Now, so the title of my presentation is Engaging with the Facts, Incorporating Multimedia into Memo Assignments. I'm going to present two assignments that I gave. They've developed over several semesters, both at University of San Diego and in China. One is a simple incorporation of a sound file. And the second is sort of my own mad science experiment, because I have a background in computer programming and website design. And you'll see a more complex sort of vision for what I think lawyering skills might be like in the 21st century. So I think there's a lot of scholarship today about how digital media pop culture is exploding in the law today, and it really is changing the way that we as lawyers do business. It's impacting the way we develop our arguments, the power of images, the manner in which those arguments are relayed to juries especially, the way we communicate amongst lawyers, the way we access the law. I hear from law students all the time that they're finding cases on Twitter, that they're going to the Facebook pages of some attorneys and they're getting important cases that have just come down. They're going to SCOTUS blog. They're using Google Scholar. They're accessing multimedia in ways that we as lawyering skills professors need to tap into in order to prepare students to be practice ready in the environment, the lawyering environment today. So as a lawyering skills professor, what can I do? What concrete things can I do to make my assignments more media sexy, let's say? So here are some ideas that I have and that I've incorporated. I think they're fairly simple. The first is to substitute media files for more traditional record documents. You might, and I've done this in the past, animate deposition or interview transcripts with live or pre-recorded audio or video. One thing that I've done in the past, and it hasn't worked out so well, is having a live interview with myself and another lawyering skills professor in front of the class. And this is one of the very first things that we do in the course, is have an interview and students take notes. I found that it's too difficult to control that live interview. So I've switched to recorded audio recordings that I do, and I'll give you an example of that and some tips on how to execute those audio recordings. The second is to incorporate digital media files or links, websites, blogs into the record. Maybe instead of an accident report that's accessed or that's on paper, maybe you download it from a website. And you'll see some website links and incorporation of digital online media in one of the examples. The second thing you can do is flavor traditional writing topics with new media. If I was to work on this IP-centric class in the future, I think in the first semester, I probably wouldn't have the students tackling trademark infringement. I probably take a traditional topic, perhaps criminal law, and try to infuse it with some digital media flavor. And that's what the first example does. The third thing is maybe to deliver your assignments using non-traditional methods rather than distributing assignment sheets. And I do this at the very first assignment of the year. Students are orally given the assignment to write a letter to file, or a client intake memo, you might call it if you've used one before. I think that doing so really enhances the listening comprehension aspect of the course. So here are some of the quick benefits of incorporating multimedia as I see them. First, it enhances the simulation aspect of the course. From day one, I start a simulation with my class in which I say, welcome to the law firm. This is your first day at the firm, and I'm going to be doing your firm orientation. After your firm orientation, you're going to come with me, you're going to listen to a client interview, you're going to bring a notebook, and you're going to take notes in this interview. Afterwards, I will give you an assignment, and you're going to take 24 hours, and you will write a client intake memo for me. After that, you will get a memo assignment that's more full-blown. So I think it does enhance the simulation aspect. I think you can emphasize the importance of this listening comprehension, as I mentioned, and also the familiarity with new technologies and being able to navigate that, ferreting these new technologies and in order to synthesize information. To energize students with novel approaches to these familiar topics, certainly, really keeps students engaged, I've found. And it also helps engage in a student-driven discussion about factual relevance. I think you'll see that in the second example. Eliciting synthesized narratives from students. This has been really successful for me when I give students media files in record documents. I found that in the final open memo that the use of the facts is really unique to the student in these open memo assignments. They're not cookie cutter arguments. They're all using different facts. And it's because they're able to synthesize these from in new ways using digital media. It's more creative. And of course, there's some valuable cool points for the students. Of course, it involves a lot of time, back-end prep, collaboration, sometimes with other professors, and some technological know-how. I will confess that I do have some tech experience in my past, and I have done some IP practice in the past, but there are some simple ways to incorporate media. So I'm going to give you the anatomy of two assignments. The first is a letter to file, AKA the client intake memo. We're calling this a letter to file because actually this is a witness interview that I scored. And so it wouldn't be appropriate to have a client intake interview, so this is a letter to file. And that these facts turn into a short memo assignment. The second is an open research assignment, and this is the third large writing assignment of the semester. After they've done their closed memo, they do their open memo. This demonstrates a more complex way of incorporating digital media, certainly pushing the boundary of creative assignment design, I will say. So, with regard to the first example, how many of you have heard of this game? Okay, so this is Angry Birds. So there are 5 birds, each with its own unique ability. There is an exploding bird, and there is a bird that drops explosive eggs, and the goal of the birds is to launch themselves into the air and kill the evil green rich pigs that house themselves in large structures that are easily knocked down. The pigs are relatively weak, and the birds are awfully angry and trying to kill them through various means. So this is the backdrop of a very simple criminal bank robbery problem. All right, let me stop this before I get distracted. Okay, this is the background. This is the flavor of a very simple criminal law problem. I think that you could use any number of different media to set the stage for this problem. This is the first thing that I do for the semester, so it tends to go over very well with students.
Major cool
Sort of major cool points. But I will say that I do try to maintain a very serious tone. This was based upon a true story in San Diego where someone came into a 7-Eleven in a Gumby outfit and held up the 7-Eleven. And I said, well, maybe if I combine Angry Birds and Gumby in this problem, maybe I can get something interesting. So here's the anatomy of this problem. First, I have a teaser file. And this is the new attorney memo. I give them this before the first actual day of class. Now we have a week of orientation in which they do the foundational stuff. And then I give them this as their assignment, a new attorney memo. And in this new attorney memo, I set the role. They are junior associates. I give them a brief description of the client, who is the bank robber, purported bank robber, and the upcoming task, which is to sit with me while I conduct a client interview and take notes. I give them a case as background reading, which is, and this takes place in Texas, this Texas federal court. And it's a simple federal bank robbery statute. The second is a media file, and it's a witness interview in which I provide a quite meandering account of the facts. They're raw, they're messy. And it requires the students to take notes by hand in a real-world manner. They're not allowed laptops. This prevents transcripts, basically. If I wanted a transcript, I could have done a transcript. But this requires them to really hone in on the important things, because it does meander, and I'll show you an example of the interview. And then at the end of this audio interview, which takes about 15 minutes, I stop it and I say, all right, associates, now I need you to go back to your office and I need you to write me a letter to file. And they're like, well, what is a letter to file? And I said, well, okay. A letter to file is something that you'll be putting into the file to summarize the facts, to give the current status of the case, and to possibly tell some next steps in the process. So then they say, well, what should it look like? And I say, well, okay. I go through the discourse criteria of this. I say, who's the audience? What's the purpose? What should the tone be? And maybe how should you proportion this document? And then they say, well, how long should it be? I mean, and then I say, well, how long do you think it should be? I don't give them a page limit. I don't give them a word count. They say, well, 3 pages. All right, well, 3 pages. Do you think 2 pages, 2 pages? Okay, so it's sort of a negotiation here. And surprisingly, they all come up with a very succinct, factual account. It's a great diagnostic tool for me. The first thing in the semester, I can look at these to determine sort of their baseline writing abilities at the very beginning. I don't grade them. I don't return them. In fact, after they give me the letter to file, immediately I send an email memo from the partner, a follow-up email, that attaches another case that they have to synthesize, giving a few more facts, and giving the short memo assignment. So this is a long way of explaining this anatomy, but the third is the task file, and this is that follow-up email. So it's really a media sandwich construction of the assignment. So here is the teaser file, and this is our robber. So let me explain a little bit about the law. The federal bank robbery statute allows for a conviction for attempted robbery if there's an act which they find is by force, violence, or executed through intimidation. And intimidation is the element that's at issue here. In order to determine whether intimidation exists, courts use a reasonableness inquiry. Would the reasonable person have been fearful under the circumstances? So this man, dressed in this outfit, this large, plush, bulbous Angry Birds outfit, goes into the bank and so gives these arguably veiled threats colored with the imagery of the Angry Birds game. Pigs, exploding birds. Now, the interesting thing is that the reasonableness determination sort of turns on whether the reasonable person would in fact know about this game, know what this game is about, understand the gravity of what he's actually saying, those sort of veiled threats, pigs. So it becomes a very interesting problem, and simple, which I think is really important for the first problem. So here is just a small excerpt of the audio witness interview.
Was there a weapon inside his costume?
I mean, I really couldn't tell. The thing is like a giant pillow, so there could have been anything in there. And like I said, the guy wasn't mean looking, and he didn't yell. And there was never any indication that he had one on him. But I mean, like I said again, like it could have been anything. It was a giant pillowcase he was wearing.
Did you ever see him moving his arms inside the costume, or like he might be jostling or holding or adjusting a weapon?
No.
Okay. All right, we're going to shift now and talk about this note that he gave you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was our standard withdrawal slip. I assume he just grabbed it from the counter before he stepped up to the teller's window. I mean, it had a withdrawal amount in the correct cash column, and the slip requested $3,000 in cash. It was a little crumpled, which was unusual, but you know, not anything that out of the ordinary. The weirdest thing, though, was at the bottom, over the signature block, there were these big block letters, and it said in red ink, "I need this money now, pig."
Okay, so it is a somewhat meandering narrative. The audio file is about 15 minutes long, but I found on the very first day of class that students were incredibly engaged when they took notes. They asked questions afterwards. Their letters to file were remarkably good. And this really paved the way for a very engaging memo assignment that followed. This is the follow-up, the third in the third file that attached another case. So if you haven't done an audio recording before, I just want to give you a few tips on doing it. This audio recording was simply done on my iPhone. If you have an iPhone or if you have a smartphone, generally you can use the pre-recorded smartphone software, and you can record an entire class if you'd like. Then I plug it in to my computer and I download that information, and the quality is very good. So another thing, I would begin by writing out the fact pattern as you would like the students to synthesize it. Then take those facts. I take 3 highlighters basically, and I choose those facts that I'd like to be elicited before the interview, during the interview, and after the interview. And for those facts that I would like elicited after the interview, I think, well, do I want these facts to cinch it? Do I want these facts to throw a wrench in it? Or do I want these facts to present a red herring? So cinch, wrench, or red herring is my sort of third inquiry. Then I begin with a very loose script that outlines the questions that the partner will be asking and bullet point facts that I need the witness or client to hit. I've used, if any of you were in one of the first workshops of the day, I used the animation software before, and I found that it was actually a little too time intensive. You have to actually write out the entire transcript that you'd like to use, then upload it, and then tinker with it. This way, if I have a partner that I'm willing to improvise with, the partner who can improvise with me, it can be a lot less time intensive. So I start with a loose script. Again, I improvise and fill out the facts. It should seem like a somewhat meandering narrative. The students should have to synthesize something here. And in the partner role, you'd want to make sure that the witness is always stating things clearly. So you shouldn't be afraid to re-emphasize and re-emphasize points. State them in your own words as the partner so that students get it, because they will miss things. One thing I do after this interview in class and after they write the letter to file, when they turn it in to me, I do post the audio onto Twin. Twin does allow you to post an audio clip of a fairly large size. If it is too large, you can post it on a closed YouTube group, should you be so technologically savvy. And don't be frustrated if you miss a few facts, because you can put them in the third file, in the supplemental memo. I strive for a length of under 15 minutes. I think anything more and they sort of glaze over, especially because they're taking notes. Voice memo software and posting of Twin. Okay, are there any questions about this example number 1? All right, so yes?
Just a real quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned facts that are elicited before, during, and after the interview.
Right.
When you say elicited after the interview, are these ones that you're sending in that supplemental memo?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. For this particular one, there weren't really any facts that were elicited afterwards. But you may decide, in this second example, I did put sort of a wrench into the situation in the last file. The second topic is internet personal jurisdiction. And I first want to extol the virtues of this topic. Yeah, you use it?
Use it for moot court.
It's fantastic.
We use it too.
You do? Oh, fantastic. First, let me explain the law a little bit. In order for this to work, I tend to think that you need to have an intentional act. You need maybe trademark infringement, maybe copyright infringement, maybe it's an intentional tort. But the only way to have the Calder effects test kick in is if there's an intentional act. This is a great way to incorporate IP topics without actually having to get to the substance of IP, right? So in this instance, I have a trademark infringement lawsuit. Because it's trademark infringement, Calder applies. And what's great is that students are already studying this at this point, at the open memo point. It's a closed world of cases. Really, there aren't that many cases out there. If Calder applies, the court often, in many circuits, will use a sliding scale test, the Zippo sliding scale, right? And incidentally, I think in the First Circuit they do use it, so it is viable in the First Circuit. Ninth Circuit is particularly great. And in the sliding scale, for those of you who don't know about it, it's a gauging of internet, of a website's interactivity. If it's more interactive, the court is more likely to determine that it's constitutionally permissible to assert jurisdiction over a website owner. So on the one side, you have active websites in which there's an active exchange of information with a host server. And in that instance, the court always asserts a jurisdiction, or more likely. On the other side, we have passive websites. And the court will rarely assert jurisdiction there. And then we have the gray area in between, where the court will look at the nature and extent of the context, whether they have the effect on forum state residents who are online. So this really presents a great opportunity to give my students a website, to actually click around, to discover the information, but also to discover how interactive the website is. So the process of finding the information is itself instructive. The way this is constructed is that there's a teaser task file, the interoffice memorandum, where I do give sort of a baseline facts, like who the parties are, the relationship between them, and it delivers the specific legal issue, because I don't want them to look at trademark infringement, right? I want specific personal jurisdiction under the California long-arm statute, which bounces it to the federal constitution, so it's only a constitutional inquiry. Then we have the media files that I created, which is a live website, press release, ad copy, and a graphic. And this actually provided, I've taken it offline since, but a clickable interactive online experience where they actually discover the record documents. They're not given the press release. They actually download the press release from the website. And this is a website that I put up on the USD servers. I've taken it down because I want to be able to reuse the problem in the future, but I'll show you screenshots. The third is the wrench file, as I call it, which is the supplemental memo. And this attaches a telephone conversation. Now let me just give you the facts briefly. This is the first This is a multinational wine conglomerate based in Napa, California called Kendall Johnson Wineries. And Kendall Johnson has brought a potential trademark issue to Anomalous Attorneys, our firm, and they would like to sue this Chilean winery called Paraíso Perdido Viña, which translated means Lost Paradise Wine. Now, Kendall Johnson has a wine of their own called Lost Paradise Wine. And you discover that, the student discovers that over the years, Paraíso Perdido Viña, which I'll call PPV, has slowly integrated the English translation to its website. And in their marketing efforts, they've slowly added Lost Paradise Wine to their efforts. Now, they're not a multinational winery. They don't have a product that's in the international stream of commerce, which is very important, right? If there was, then it would be a stream of commerce analysis, and it would be a huge quagmire after McIntyre came down. So we don't want to have a stream of commerce, but they have been changing their name. They have been beefing up their international visibility for their tours, and for their wine, which is only available in Argentina and Chile. So this is what they learn in the first file. Now this is the website that I created. So this is the home page, and students were actually sent to this web page. It was hosted on the USD server. The first thing that you see is the home page, and it provides some description. There's a standard version and a mobile version. The website's in several different languages. Its default language is Spanish, but there is an English translation, and students were actually able to click through. There's a virtual tour, which was not live, but when they did click YouTube, they went to a YouTube page which gave Paraíso Perdido's bio information. So they did learn additional information when they clicked that, if they clicked that. When they click on stay, they see room options in Chilean pesos, which is significant for the facts. They learn that there aren't credit card abilities through the website. They can't book through the website. So this does sort of set it in the middle of that interactivity, etc. Live help feature, so this does also set it towards possibly more interactive, right? They get to type in this was not live either. They get to type in something, and someone from Paraíso Perdido who speaks multiple languages will help them out, but won't give them, you can't do reservations, but you can figure out where to buy their wines in South America. The next is a contact page, and if the students actually entered their information into that contact page, press send, then they got a response in English that did reveal a few more facts. So also in this links page, if they press down at the bottom, download press release, they received this press release in which the PPV is seeking wine ambassador blogs that will sponsor them. So all of these are different facts that the students need to synthesize and determine where in that sliding scale it falls. It doesn't have the effect on foreign residents that's requisite enough to exercise specific personal jurisdiction. This is the ad and the supplemental memorandum, excuse me. So I think my own sort of mad science experiments can help me sort of change the way that I interact with my students. And I really do think that it's helped my students drive the narrative. And that's it. Thank you very much.